What is one really unique type of oil that the Sardinians eat that is extremely unique to Sardinia, but could be contributing to why they live so long? I've done videos on Sardinia specifically because they have the highest concentration of centenarians. And unlike other regions, the men live just as long as the women. Usually there's 5 times as many centenarian women as there are men. In Sardinia, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. They both eat similar diets, the men and women. They both have similar lifestyles. What is making it different there? There's a few things, but there's one oil in particular, and we have to look at the research here to really understand what's going on. After today's video, I put a link down below for LMNT electrolytes. If you're trying to reduce calories and you want something to sip on, or you exercise and you sweat a lot, obviously electrolytes are important, but LMNT is different. First of all, it's gonna be the best tasting electrolyte you've probably ever had, like hands down. They've got like chocolate flavors, they've got citrus salt, they've got grapefruit salt, you name it. You can have it hot and it tastes like a hot chocolate. It's amazing. And we're talking 5 calories in most of the flavors. So something that you could literally have while you're fasting, but I like to have them in between meals so that I don't feel the urge to go eat things. But 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium per packet. And that link down below gets you a free sample pack with any purchase. That means you get a free variety pack that you can give to a friend, keep for yourself or whatever with any purchase. So check them out, use that special link down below, drinklmnt.com/Thomas, top line of the description underneath this video. The oil we're talking about is something called mastic oil. It comes from the mastic tree. This is very specific to Sardinia. Of course, we're at a point now where you can get it globally, but it's part of their diet. And what's interesting is, like if you look at mastic oil compared to olive oil, there's some similarities, but also some differences. What's really interesting about the fat composition of mastic oil is that it is predominantly oleic acid. And oleic acid has huge metabolic benefits. Okay, mainly how it can convert into something that's called OEA. Now, I've talked about this with olive oil before. This is hugely important for the mitochondria. So from a longevity perspective, all roads do tend to come back to the mitochondria. If we have a healthy mitochondria, we are usually more resilient to the different things that happen. The DNA damage, the inflammation, simple energy dynamics, being able to efficiently produce energy. So OEA has a lot of research behind it for being very, very good at that. The other thing that's very interesting is also very high in palmitoleic acid. Palmitoleic acid is one of these fats that's in like macadamia nuts that I tout so much. So this is a really, really interesting oil. Surprisingly, it's decently high omega-6, but not ridiculous. It's like in the 20%, 25% or so omega-6s. So it's not like some of these other nuts, like say cashews or something like that, are gonna be a really high omega-6 value, but just because it's lowish omega-6 does not mean that it's high omega-3. A lot of times people think that because omega-3s and omega-6s are kind of competing for each other, they think that if something is low in omega-6s, it's automatically high in omega-3s. This is predominantly a monounsaturated fat. Okay, so that means it's a stable fat. But forget all that. Let's just like get into like what this does. If you look at a really cool study in the Hedetic Journal of Cardiology, you see some really interesting stuff, specifically looking at cholesterol. So they found that if subjects had a higher than 200 cholesterol, they could participate in this study, and they gave them mastic oil or a placebo for 8 weeks. LDL cholesterols dropped significantly. Total cholesterols dropped down to 135 from over 200 in most of the people that were consuming the mastic oil. Triglycerides are the storage form of fat. Okay, triglycerides reduced down 15%. Blood glucose levels decreased 5%. And HDL cholesterol increased 5%. What the heck? So most of the literature is kind of, it's vague, right? Because we have rodent model literature and then we have this in vitro stuff because there's just not enough people consuming mastic oil to really understand like largely what's happening. But if you look at a study published in Immuno, it did in vitro and in vivo studies in rodents to try to get a better picture. In vitro, like in a petri dish, they found that when mastic oil was added, it changed, technically reduced the phosphoproteins that would lead to the building blocks of inflammation. So it like stopped inflammation from kind of being built in the first place. But then in the rodents, they saw that the inflammation could not infiltrate the tissues, cavities as well. So essentially what's happening here is you're slowing the formation of inflammation and you're slowing sort of it penetrating. Now, in the sake of aging, this is very important because you've got something that's called inflammaging. It sounds kind of funny, but basically the sheer process of getting older, the sheer process of DNA damage that is a normal thing and happens as we get older, creates these small particles that the body has to fight off. And when the body has to fight those off, you have increases in inflammation. And if that inflammation is just readily absorbed and accepted by the body and you have circulating levels of inflammation that are high, you're gonna feel achy, you're gonna feel flat out old. One of the most important things is not feeling old. If you feel old, you don't move. If you feel old, you don't do things. If you feel young, then you're active. The most important thing you can do to maintain your youth is to be active and to consume protein and maintain your muscle and maintain fluidity. So if you start aching and hurting, you become slowly more sedentary. So this makes sense. If it's anti-inflammatory and it has these metabolic mitochondrial benefits, I think it's hugely beneficial. This video is not sponsored by Mastic Oil, okay? But I do think that you may want to consider adding it into your diet. It's easy to get online. You can find it on Amazon. It's an interesting thing. The next best one would probably be macadamia nuts. Macadamia nuts have a very similar fatty acid profile in many ways. Okay, that's probably going to be the next best oil there. Second to that is going to be olive oil and avocado oil. If you can add those in, you're doing yourself quite a lot of good. But the Sardinians are doing something very unique here, and it's not olive oil like the rest of the Mediterraneans. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.